sometimes you gotta enjoy the finer things in life. Like stealing your wife's whipped cream on her Starbucks. Oh man. It's fucking good, man. So, what to get into? Well, I have an order of business that I'm going to get into. And it was healing magic. Still, to continue. There's many things I need to get into. The best way would be to start off with proof, but if I start off a video with audio, another video, most people might turn it off right away and not understand why I'm playing it or know what to listen for. So I guess I have to start off by saying some shit. But that's what I'm doing. So anyways, in the last video, but the last installment of a video that I had, the last installment of a video I had in Magick Part 3 was about the emotions. And then I got into a bit about empaths and how empaths take on other people's emotions. It's funny, there's numerology for your name. So I do Corey LeBlanc. What you do is you take your vowels. A has a value of 1. O has a value of 5. I want to say it was. E was 5. O was 6. Y was 7. I think I is 9 and U is 3. Those are all the values. So Corey LeBlanc, first thing I have O, E, and Y, and then A and C, or E and A, my other name, ends up adding up to 24, which makes a 6. And then I listened to what a 6 was, and it was you are a healer, you want to heal people. You have to be careful because this can cause a lot of harm to you. And it's kind of what I was talking about in the last video. I got to be careful and have people who resonate at that frequency of being an empath, let's say, or people that have that emotional ability to easily take on other people's emotions. You really have to be careful with what they put around and how they talk after they speak or are around someone. So I just thought that was a funny coincidence. After that video, I see that video, so when I do it, it turns out, yeah, just exactly what I said. So all that is to say that being empathic, everybody is to a certain degree, some more, some less. My wife watches a movie where someone's being harmed or killed or hurt, tortured, raped, whatever the fucking movie might have, that's even if they're going through just a trauma or a struggle, she doesn't take it on as her own, or doesn't feel those emotions. But I have to sometimes leave the room. I can get very, very into it, as if I picture myself in a very small, confined space, there's someone behind me and someone in front of me, I'm getting all fucking weird just thinking about it. And then realizing we have to all back up slowly out of that hole. Fucking feeling so weird just thinking about it. Not being able to move, feeling so restricted, it starts freaking me out. Just having that. There's like an emotional something inside of me that's telling me, get the fuck out of here. Like I'm seeing it in my mind right now. Something behind me, and then feeling that trap feeling, I feel like I can freak out. I can really easily put myself in places via realization while visualizing and watching a movie. So, what I want to teach is how to use that to your benefit. I want to teach how to take a stronger emotional feeling, such as love, or being happy. If you want successful magic, you have to put in the emotion into that magic, into that work, into that spell, into whatever it is you are in the moment of doing. You gotta put as much as you can in it. That will make it real to a certain degree and have it come into your reality. Well, I hope you can hear me. I feel like I'm talking low and I don't know, I have trouble hearing or something, but all that's to say is to heal yourself, to heal your body. I've already went into all the ways to heal your body, from you know, you're not feeling good, you can just breathe, focus on breathing. That'll change the nervous system you're currently in, because you might be in the fight or flight nervous system. If you're able to get yourself out of that nervous system, well then you won't be so reactive, right? So that's one way. I've already taught you how to change, how to heal, because once you get out of the reactive fight or flight stage, well then your body can start healing itself. After that is once you get a grasp on that, and or while you're practicing, you're staying in the right state at the right time, because sometimes you need to be in fight or flight. Sometimes you don't. After that, it's about the correct water and the correct food and correct exercise. And sorry about that. Not baby mama drama, baby drama. My daughter wants to play with my older daughter's ukulele, and she doesn't want her little sister to break it or untune it. So I told her just put it up somewhere high where she can't grab it, and then go do something else and let her have her fit. Realize that she can't just get what she wants, because how often do you get what you want in life? How often do I get what I want in life? You know, you don't always get what you want, but sometimes you might get what you need. What is that? The Beatles? No, fuck Beatles. Rolling Stones? But you can try, you'll find sometimes you might just get what you need. Anyways. So, after you manage to realize how the breathing works and changing from nervous systems, because, I mean, you lay down in one nervous system, in the fight or flight nervous system, and having a hard time relaxing, you start focusing on breathing. And oftentimes, for me anyways, you'll straight up fall asleep. Oh, like a lake. And then you'll wake up and you'll feel a hell of a lot better. You'll wake up and you're still in that nervous system. You're ready to go. Now, you might end up having a coffee or something like that and slowly get yourself back into that sympathetic nervous system. But, you know, it is as it is. There's a reason for that. But after you do that, you gotta focus on, most people will focus on, like I said, the water and the exercise and the food, but they won't focus on passion, sex, creativity, and that's uber important. All right, just real quickly, it is 2 little green dots. I love that shit. There's my pillar of Yakin, silver with the white candle, and Boaz, black with the black candle, severity and mercy. Baina and Chokma at the top, and what's going to be with the sun on it here is going to be, see there's Gaia down there, and then the moon is this one right here, and then on top there's the sun, and then on top of that is, yes, Uranus, Uranus, and then Pluto, and then on the pillar of Yakin, there's Venus at the bottom, then Jupiter, and then Neptune, and then on the negative pole, see that would be the positive pole, and then the middle pillar is what you're trying to be. You neutralize when you get your negative or your positive pole, your negative pole, to create energy that's in harmony with each other. Then you become the middle pillar and you have your own form of energy. On this one, it's Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. And so, but then you're not utilizing just this pillar most of the time, and this one some of the times, or this one most of the time, this one some of the times. You're using both and using all the planets in the middle. See, you're not really using these ones in the middle if you're only using one or another. You know what I mean? And eventually I'm going to have a nice gold one of these pillars for the middle one too. But for now, I just make my own candle. You know, simple. You write on this candle. You know, I'm grateful for my internal negative polarity, or my internal pillar, Boaz pillar severity, to be in harmony with my internal pole of Yakin, creating the middle pillar within my body and giving me that unique energy for me to use to create anything I want. I will be harm free some more to be. And you put that on one of these bad boys. I put that on that guy, put that on that guy, and now I'm gonna make this my middle one. I'm gonna put it on that guy. Same fucking thing. 3, and I mean I made all the planets associated with that pillar. So that's who this candle is being offered to. So all these 3 planets here. This candle is being offered to all 3 of these planets. Plus, when I burnt them initially, they each had an incense. So I wrote on the candle, I am offering this candle and incense to these 3 planets. I write their names and their sigils on it as an offering for compensation for allowing the above manifestation to have happen. Thank you. I will be hungry, some more to be. And that's what I do for that one, and we'll do for this one. Hold on one second. Alright, I don't know where I got left off there, but I don't know how the fuck I'm gonna do this. But I'm just gonna try to light my little pillar candle here after I carved it. But anyway, so like I said, this candle was offered. I just dropped the 3. Alright, just dropped you. Everybody watching. Hopefully there's more than 3 watching, but you never know. So these 3 deities, planetary energies, got offered to this candle and the incense I made for it. These 3 got offered to that candle, the incense I made for it. Now this candle that I just finished carving, among other things, it was for the sun initially at the top is what I wrote, but then further down I turned it into my middle pillar. You know, the sun is in the middle of those planets. But do you see how it's the sun, then the moon, and then Gaia? So Gaia is Malkuth, kingdom, earth. The Yesod right above it is the subconscious, right? Would be why I say the astral plane. Above that is the sun, which is a conscious mind. Conscious mind's above the subconscious. Get it? Subconscious. So well, that doesn't make sense because the moon's above us. Yes, but our subconscious is what's actually creating everything we see down here in the kingdom. So if you want to get anything else into the kingdom, into your reality, you have to get it into the subconscious from your conscious. So the sun is in the middle. So at the top was Pluto, then it's Uranus. I won't get into what that means. Alright, sorry about that. I lit it up there now. So anyway, so I was fucking up what I was gonna say. Because sun is beauty, I believe. Let me see if I can get this going while it's still recording. Okay. So Taparith is the sun, is beauty. Below that is the foundation, is Yesod. So Yesod is the foundation, okay? Before that is Noth, it's Doth, it's knowledge. And then it's crown, Kether, which is Pluto, okay? So what happens? All right, so let me try to get this into a little fast, little easy way without, because doing path work and figuring out what all these sephiroths mean and all that, because you have to go down the tree of life. Okay, a lot of people like to work up the tree of life, but it all depends on how you work, right? You start in the kingdom and you go up to Malkuth, or Malkuth is the kingdom. That's where we are. Okay, we're in this physical body. Now, you're going through your life. You've been programmed as a child. Whatever's in your mind's programming. You start working a job like I did. Whatever happens, happens. Okay, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, you come into some knowledge, right? So Yesod is there, and then the sun is your conscious mind. The moon is your subconscious mind. It's Yesod and Taparith. And then all of a sudden, part of the way I woken up was Uranus going into Taurus caught my eye, and I wasn't in astrology or nothing. Well, what is Uranus? Uranus is Doth. It's knowledge. Well, Uranus came and shook up my world. It turned it upside down. It brought me into fear-based media, which started my whole spirituality. But I had to be scared. I had to stop working, and then I looked into magic. And so I took all that information, all that knowledge, all that from Doth, from Uranus, and I got it all into my conscious mind, the sun, which is just so I went from Doth to the sun, and then from there I was able to get it into my subconscious mind. So you kind of work up the tree of life, right? Because I didn't get the crown yet, and we'll see when that happens. Maybe I'm on the precipice of doing that, but I didn't get the crown yet. But I'm working up the tree of life because I got up to, but the energy flows down. So this goes both ways. The energy flows down the tree of life into manifestation for you when you do magic. But we have to work up it to understand how to perform the magic. These are where
the rules of magic, the laws of magic come from the tree of life, stuff like that. But anyways, so I got all the knowledge from Doth, from Uranus, and then from there I got ahead in my conscious mind, and I sat on it being an armchair occultist for a while, I'm not putting anything into practice, and I said, fuck it, I need to change. I want to change. I need to blah 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 blah. So I took action and I started doing magic. And guess what? My conscious mind, from the knowledge I got from the higher Sephiroth of Doth, from knowledge, I got it into my conscious mind. From there, from my conscious mind, I learned, I knew how, from the knowledge, I knew how to get it into Yesod, into the subconscious mind, right? Conscious, the sun, subconscious, the moon. I got that information into the subconscious mind of what I wanted to happen. When you get something in Yesod, the astral, right? It comes down into the kingdom, which is the earth, which is Gaia, which is this one. So yeah, this is a way of, showing respect to the tree of life that taught me how to do magic. It's a way of balancing the energies of my body symbolically, being, giving an offering, using these candles, having this as a symbolic representation of my body. So whatever I do on my altar here, this is my portable altar. This isn't my temple room. I have a whole room downstairs dedicated for my temple. This is just in my bedroom. Because why not have a candle in my bedroom burning at the same time as doing other magic down there, right? Why can't I split myself? But anyways, so I have this burning up here. This is a symbolic representation. As you can see, the design makes kind of this cross. And there's lots of, anyways, doesn't matter. Point is, it's a symbolic representation of the energies in my body that I all have in balance. Do you not see how the two candles here are burning down at the same time, my negative and positive? My middle pillar is the last one burning, right? These two energies are in harmony with each other, with me. That one's not bad and this one's not good. And this one's not shitty and this one's not the greatest one ever. This one's for banishing, this is for invoking. That's it. When I use them together, I can use all the energies from the middle pillar. But sometimes I just have to use Saturn, only Saturn alone. And sometimes I only use Venus or Jupiter, only alone. Sometimes I only use Mars alone or Mercury alone. And sometimes I try to invoke these guys, but invoking some of these guys is hard if you don't have these two in balance. And see how the moon's in the middle there? Well, the moon has both positive and negative into it, right? We're about to hit the full moon, I think on the 28th of this month, at 2 something for Eastern timers, like myself. So that's going to be the time to invoke something. So that's the moon invoking side, the banishing side, understand? Sun also waxes away. All these planets do, right? But anyways, all that's just a little bit to talk about that, and I'll get back to the healing shit, I guess. Alright, so I'm working on my daughter's little chain here to fix for her. I'll try to finish up that one song. Oh, it's gonna be terrible, eh? It's gonna be fucking brutal. All good. Anyways, not cutting the fucking light on the work, eh? Stupid. Anyways, so when people start focusing on exercise and food and water, that's beautiful, it's perfect. But the one missing ingredient that I was trying to get to was passion, sexual energy and all that. And I already went over this in my last video, so I don't think I have to go over this again. But among many things connected to your Mars energy, not letting your sexual system lock up is not healthy. And Thunder Wizard says it best, if you're one of those people, because I went into it too. I have a practice that I do at a certain time of month that I let my sexual energy build up and I don't have sex and I abstain for a different purpose, and then, but if you don't have a practice or something to transmute or send that energy through, that channeled energy into something that you can actually, especially for younger guys, it's very hard for a younger guy to probably even do this practice. I mean, you probably wouldn't even think about it any other reason, because, sex is more important than doing projects and being creative probably at a certain point. Normally after puberty, it's more important than most things. So, but unless you have a way or have that urge to actually be able to have something creative to be able to focus that energy into, I wouldn't even bother trying to trying to not have sex, abstain from sex. But you don't want to have sex so much that you deplete your creative energy. You know, there is a reason why the orgasm is called the mini death. And that's not to say that it's a bad thing, but it is your creative energy. Sexual energy is one of the most powerful energies. So all that's to say is you need to make sure you keep that line open and free from being blocked up. You save up so much, you use it, and then you release it, and then you keep doing that over and over and over again. But as important as that is also creativity, creative energy, having something you're passionate about. If you don't have something you're passionate about to wake up to every day, you just wake up, go to work, come home, and then watch conspiracy stuff on YouTube, or just watch YouTube and try to spiritually advance, but you're not really passionate, you have nothing that excites you about life, well, it's not very fun. It's not going to be, you know, worth living. So that's that part of the pentagram you also have to explore. So that's just to finish up that idea before I get into anything else. And that's kind of what my last video was about. But in this video, we have to get into more of the actual healing stuff. So the healing stuff I'm talking about is not necessarily sigils and specific spells you can do to heal magically cancer or anything like that. It's preventative maintenance, basically, so this shit doesn't happen first. It's understanding the human body, which is magic, because the body's magical. It's understanding what to put in there and all that. So before I get into the magnetic emotion stuff, I want you to hear it from a doctor himself talk about how emotions are magnetic, talk about how the organs regenerate. All this is going to serve as programming to program your mind so that you actually, I mean, your body already knows it. Your organs already know what they can do. But your conscious mind might get in the way. If your conscious mind allows stuff into the subconscious, like I just said, whenever you get the knowledge from Uranus into your conscious mind, and from there you're able to put that knowledge into your subconscious mind in a way that's going to create things that are going to filter down into Malkuth. What? Okay, yeah, thank you. When you get something into your subconscious mind that you want to filter down to Malkuth. Fuck, she fucked me up. I forget where I was going with that. Oh yeah, so this is what magic is, right? But if you've been programmed over and over again, and it's not necessarily programmed against you or for a nefarious reason to kill off people faster. I think it's just people just don't know this stuff anymore. We're so far removed from the ancestors or the magical books and the things that taught this that no one just knows. But you know, the doctors know. They're taught this in school. This is why there's different rules, and a lot of people go to Mexico for stuff like different plastic surgeries, or Jerry Tennant had to go to Mexico for different dental surgeries that they wouldn't perform in the States on him, and that was the cause of a lot of his problems, and he had a lot of problems. You're going to hear about them soon. But the point is the ideas you have, the programming you have in your conscious mind are embedded in a subconscious programming, but you need to remove that and put in the right subconscious programming, meaning your organs have the power to regenerate new cells, which make him new organs every so many days. So that's what this is what this is gonna do, which is healing magic. I'm getting rid of your old programming and putting in your new programming by listening to somebody like this, a doctor who actually tells you that stored emotions cause disease, that your cells and your organs regenerate. So there's no reason to if you have bad organs or have something bad going on in your body right now, well, if you have a healthy, high pH, if you have the right voltage in your body, taking the right food, right exercise, water, air, all that, then there's no reason that you can't heal yourself. Now, you're going to say, okay, but if I want to heal somebody else and they're not awoke yet, well, what can I do to do that? Well, that's a harder thing to do, because that's the problem I have. To do healing magic on my brother-in-law, for example, who's got a brain tumor, it's like, if I remove the brain tumor, he's not going to change his ways. He's going to keep taking in only Pepsi and junk food, not eating right, getting exercise, and going out. And even if he wanted to, maybe his mother wouldn't let him. So it's almost pointless to just have to keep doing magic over and over and over again. It's like I said about the empath taking on the other person's emotions. Every week they dump on the empath all week about the problems at home. And then a Friday comes, the empath gets a 2-day break. They have to fucking lay in bed all week and have all those emotions stored in them from other people and just tearing them apart. Then all of a sudden they finally get it out for whatever reason somehow. They go back to work on Monday and then that person dumps on them their weekend's problems, and then all week again. And you can keep taking that person's crap and making them feel better. and that, all the power to you. But unless they change the circumstances, you're always just going to be a dumping ground. You're better off to just not protect yourself from them and not go around them until they fix their problems. If that means you have to tell them that and they stop talking to you, well, then that's a win-win probably, because then maybe they might get in their head they got to fix their problems and they're going to stop coming around you. That's the same thing with healing magic. If you want to heal somebody who's sick, who's not going to change their ways, well, then it may not be possible. But if they are the person who's willing to get this information, well, then you get this information to them, and you can do some of the healing shit that I've already talked about, Archangel Raphael sigils and different magics, and any magic I've ever taught you on here. Candle magic. I am so grateful for blah, 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 blah. Make sure you use the right corresponding person. Like if Mercury is in Scorpio, not retrograde, going straight, is one of the best times to do healing magic. Depending on the person and whatever is going on, making candles to them and completely having complete faith that it's going to happen. Getting that into your subconscious, into your reality. But keep in mind, everybody else's mind focusing on that person being sick plays a part into this. Sometimes you might have to do magic to get their minds off of it. Get everything obstructing him from, like a road opener almost, for healing. Get rid of all the obstructions that are in the way for this person to receive the healing they need. Stuff like that. Yeah, do those first, then just make it a candle. I'm so grateful this person's healed. Knowing specifically what's wrong with them and using the right words also comes into play there. But anyways, I'm going to get into some Jerry Tennant, and this is one of my first healing episodes I ever made on my podcast. So yeah, thanks for tuning in.
To move over and take out the next circuit. So a huge problem is that our kids are in high school, they go to the dentist and they say, oh, you got to get your wisdom teeth out. It's that old thing of, well, if you go to Midas, you get a muffler. So a study came out last year showing that 65% of root canal extractions were unnecessary. Well, nevertheless, they get their wisdom teeth pulled, and now they start getting infection in that area. And the wisdom teeth circuit is heart, small intestine, but listen, it's the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is the body's on-off switches. So all of a sudden, within days after getting their wisdom teeth extracted, the kids have lost their on-off switch, which means their body doesn't know how to control itself. Then over time, it begins to move next door and takes out the spleen-stomach circuit. Now remember that the spleen circuit is the power supply to the adrenal glands. So now soon they've lost their control panel, their on-off system, and then they lose their adrenals, so they can't deal with stress, and so they began to become what many people say, oh, he's just a teenager. Well, no, he's not just a teenager. He's lost his ability, the whole way the body deals with stress. And so many of our kids hide themselves within electronics, because within the electronics, they have an on-off switch. In their body, they don't. So they can't deal with the real world anymore. And so they hide within their cell phone and their Game Boys or whatever you call them. Nevertheless, this is a huge problem. Now, when you lose, I only got 5 minutes left. So when you lose your ability to make adrenaline, you go down the following slippery slope. You have trouble going to sleep. You have trouble dealing with stress. You have trouble with your memory. And then you can't multitask. So you're sitting reading a book or watching TV and somebody says, hey, do you want mustard or mayonnaise? You become very annoyed because they interrupted you. But you don't have the mental horsepower to stay attached to whatever you're doing, so you detach, you pick mustard, you go back to your book, and now you can't remember your place, and you're even more annoyed. And then it gets to where you don't like any stimulus, so you don't like loud noises, loud music, rowdy crowds, can't be around people who are arguing. And eventually it gets to where you don't even want to be touched, you just want to sit in the corner and have people leave you the heck alone. And then your sexual equipment quits working. And then you can't go to sleep before 11, and when you wake up, you're still tired. All of that's due to the loss of the spleen power supply to your adrenals. Well, what I've just described, of course, is very destructive. If you can't deal with the life of the world, you can't be a good spouse, and particularly if your sexual equipment doesn't work anymore, then that's a big problem in a marriage. You can't be a good parent because kids make noise and want something from you and you have nothing to give, you can't be a good worker, you can't be a good friend, you can't be good at much of anything, so your life's in the toilet simply because you've lost the spleen circuit that goes to the adrenal glands. And that's a huge problem in our society. Well, now, Eileen McCusick spoke earlier about mapping the field of emotions, and this is the traditional Chinese one, so that the various circuits have these various sorts of emotions get stuck in these various particular places or in the teeth that are associated with these. Dr. Banas published these, and of course Eileen has published hers, which is this group of where things get stuck. And as far as erasing emotions are concerned, because emotions are a magnetic field, you can erase them with a stronger magnetic field. One of the laws of physics is if you take any magnet and you put a stronger magnet over it, then the weaker magnet assumes the characteristics of the stronger one. And so when you have these emotions that are stuck, you can begin to erase them in a variety of different ways. Now, there are various groups over the years that have looked at this subject and tried to figure out how to do it. EFT, Psych-K, emotion code, psychosomatic energetics, et cetera, et cetera. But certainly we had developed one where you can, if you can think about emotion while holding onto these hand grips with your biomodulator, you could erase the emotion. But when we did that, we were doing in one emotion at the time. And of course, Eileen talked to you this morning about using her tuning fork to do it, which is very effective. What I have recently found is that if you treat the wisdom teeth, which treats your autonomic nervous system, then you can begin to knock out, you can not only change the polarity in all of your various circuits at one time, but also knock out many of the motions automatically. Now, a pendulum is actually like a single string on a guitar, and the weight on the pendulum makes the string taut. So when it's moved, it's actually resonating with whatever frequency the string is. So what you do is you hold this pendulum over the small intestine, heart, small intestine autonomic system, and you take the biotransducer and simply put it over the wisdom teeth, and you watch the pendulum, and it'll always be spinning backwards if the voltage is low, counterclockwise, and you keep holding it there, and pretty soon it'll slow down, and then it'll start spinning clockwise. And then you do the same on the other side, again holding the pendulum over the heart small intestine circuit, put the biotransducer over the autonomic system where you can access it with the tooth, watch it spin backwards and in the correct way, and now when you go back and check all of the circuits, you've corrected the polarity in every circuit, and many of the emotions that you had found out in the biofield are already gone as well. So unfortunately, I don't have the time to talk to you about how we're wired up with polarity and with how our body's all golden mean and how implosion occurs. But if you're interested in those subjects, then we have some videos that will help you in that area. Plus, we'll be giving some demonstration. If there are any of you in the audience who happen to have an emotion, anybody here? We'll be doing some demonstrations in the breakout room. So what I've hoped to accomplish in these few minutes I had to talk with you is to help you understand that the body is an electronic device which has multiple battery packs, and the chronic disease occurs when those battery packs won't hold a charge, and that getting well involves you identifying which battery packs are failing you, identifying the reason that they're failing you and fixing that, so that it's basically what we're doing is like you coming home from work and opening the fridge and it's hot in there and the lamp in the living room won't turn on, the TV in the bedroom won't turn on, and you go out in the garage and flip the circuit breaker and now everything works. Well, that's the way we do medicine now, is we figure out which circuit breaker is out, go fix it, turn you back on, and let your body heal itself, which it does very well if it has the voltage, the nutrients, and deal with the toxins. Thank you for allowing me to be here. back on and let your body heal itself, which it does very well if it has the voltage, the nutrients, and deal with the toxins. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I want to have special medical boards for integrative medicine and homeopathic medicine, and I'm licensed under that Arizona Board of Integrative and Homeopathic Medicine, and that's the license that I have this conversation under, and not my Texas license. I'm trained as an ophthalmologist and did traditional ophthalmology with a focus on cataract surgery for 30 years or so. I had a lot of fun being an ophthalmologist. I was able to do a lot of things that changed the way ophthalmology was practiced. I had a great deal to do with bringing intraocular lenses into this country, or the use of them. When I was trained, we would simply take the lens out of the eye and people would end up wearing really big, thick glasses. Of course, those allowed you to see, but they were fairly disabling because everything looked 30% too big and 30% too close, and it was hard to walk or drive or whatever. So I was one of the early people to put lenses in eyes after cataract surgery. And then there were some problems with the European lenses that we used in the beginning, so I modified those and got lenses to work better, and then began to teach others how to do that. So that was one of the fun things I did. When I was trained, we kept patients in the hospital for 2 weeks with both eyes blinded, and of course, the elderly tend to become disoriented and even psychotic if you keep them in bed and blind them for a couple of weeks. So I developed a way to make a watertight incision so that they didn't have to stay in bed, and we could actually get them up and walk them immediately from the surgery table, and that changed a lot of things as well. And also we had a problem with people, the elderly, going into the hospitals. You know, elderly people have a tendency to get a particular pattern of living. They eat certain things that agree with them and that keep their digestive and urinary processes working. There are foods that upset them, and so you put them in a hospital and change all of that. They commonly get sick just from being inside their normal environment, and often fall and hurt themselves. One of the things we began then to work on was outpatient surgery. So being able to operate on cataract and then have people go immediately home was a great benefit, and we helped, along with my anesthesiologist and internist, develop the techniques for that and taught how to do that. And I guess the next thing I did in ophthalmology that was kind of fun is I did the majority of the research for the laser that's used in LASIK surgery. So I did about 90% of that research for the company called Visex. But during that process of doing the laser surgery, we didn't know that the laser wouldn't kill viruses. And so I was using the laser to carve the scar off of the cornea of a fellow from India that had leukemia. And it carved the scar off well enough, but it also released viruses from his cornea. And that went into my nose and into my brain, and I got encephalitis. And so I got to where I could see a patient, know what was wrong with them, but I couldn't remember how to write a prescription. I also developed spastic movements, so I'd be sitting there and all of a sudden I'd do something like that, which doesn't work really well if you're operating inside somebody's eyeball. And I had overwhelming fatigue. And so for all those reasons, I had to quit work at the end of November 1995. And so I slept 16 hours a day, had 2 or 3 hours a day in which I could understand a newspaper, and then like a light switch, it'd go off and I couldn't understand it anymore. I went to the best doctors I could find in Boston and New York, et cetera, and they all said, well, you have 3 viruses in your brain. We don't know what to do about it. Good luck. So during that 2 or 3 hours a day I could think, I had to figure out how to get myself well. And so I began the journey of trying to figure out how I might do that. And one of the things that resonated with me was that every cell in the body had the same hardware. Even though cells look quite different, just like a laptop looks different than a desktop computer, they still have all the same basic parts. And I thought, well, if I can figure out how to make one cell work, I can make them all work. And so I started down that road, and I bought a bunch of cellular biology books, which I hadn't read in 30 years, and began to read through them. And one of the things that resonated with me, it said that cells have to run at a pH of 7.35 to 7.45. Well, I didn't really remember much about pH except it was acid-base balance. But as an eye surgeon, I didn't really need to know much about that for 30 years. And so I began to study pH and discovered that pH is simply the measurement of voltage in a liquid. If you think about a copper wire, you just turn the switch on and the electrons flow, you turn the switch off and they stop. But in a liquid, it can either be an electron donor or an electron stealer. And by convention, if the liquid is an electron stealer, you put a plus sign in front of the voltage. And if it's an electron donor, you put a minus sign in front of the voltage. By convention also, you take the voltage and you convert it to a logarithmic scale from 0 to 14 and call it pH. So plus 400 millivolts of electron stealer is the same as a pH of 0. And minus 400 millivolts of electron donor is the same as a pH of 14. When you read then that cells have to run at a pH of 7.35 to 7.45, that's a synonym of minus 20 to minus 25 millivolts, give or take a millivolt. So I said, oh, cells have to have voltage to work. That makes sense. And so all of a sudden, this new way of thinking about things was obvious to me. The next issue was, how do you measure it? Well, of course, if you take a standard pH meter, it has a switch on it. You can switch it from pH or millivolts, whichever one you want to have it read out. And you simply stick the probe in a liquid and it'll tell you what the pH is or what the millivolts is and or convert it to the logarithmic scale of pH for you. So I said, well, how do you measure it in the body? And I found that a chap named Nakatani was the first person to use modern electronics to measure acupuncture circuits, and published in 1951. So I got his rather rudimentary equipment, started measuring, and where my brain should be running at minus 25 millivolts, I found it was running between minus 2 to minus 4 millivolts. So then I knew why it didn't work. Didn't have the juice to do it. So the next issue is, well, what am I going to do about it? So I began to do some more reading and found that a Russian chap had figured out the waveform that would more efficiently transfer electrons to cell membranes. I began to try to learn about that and discovered that there was a Russian pediatrician named Zulia Valieva Frost. Zulia Valieva married a chap from London named Frost and had moved to London. And she was in the process of teaching people how to use this Russian device to transfer energy to cells. So I called her and I said, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. And she said, well, as luck would have it, I'm teaching my first seminar in San Francisco in 3 days. I said, sign me up, I'll be there. So I went to that seminar and got the Russian device and began to recharge my cells. And in about 6 weeks or so, things began to get better. The other thing that happened about that time was that I was on an airplane and there was a nurse sitting next to me from this Dallas area. And she began to tell me that she had lymphoma, had this big tumor around her neck and scattered throughout her body, and that she had gone to Mexico, and in a matter of days the tumors were gone, even though MD Anderson had told her to go home and die. So I went down to visit with the docs that helped her to see how in the world they did that, and that was sort of the beginning of my journey along with this other business of the electronics to figure out how to get well. And one of the things they taught me was that essentially all tumors are associated with infection in your teeth, particularly root canal teeth. And so she had gone down, and they had pulled her root canal tooth and cleaned up the infection in her mouth, and in a matter of days her tumors were gone. And she sent me not only photographs, but she sent me her medical records from MD Anderson of when she came back, and they proved that her tumors had disappeared. So I had a root canal tooth here in what's called the spleen stomach acupuncture circuit. And so my docs here in Dallas said there's nothing wrong with that tooth. But I'd also developed a bleeding disorder, and so I went back down to Mexico and had the dentist that had operated on this nurse work on me, and when she pulled that tooth, there was so much infection in the bone, it splattered all over her mask. And yet I had no symptoms as far as the tooth was concerned. But 48 hours after she pulled the tooth, my bleeding disorder was cured. And that was rather amazing. And then over the next 6 weeks or so, my brain started to work again. And so that's how I started going down this road of figuring out how the body really works and what the role of voltage is in the body, because it's obviously so different than what I was taught in medical school. One of the things that I was led to try to understand was acupuncture. Actually, that was part of a bigger picture, in that I was sitting in my chair at home and I said to myself, well, obviously traditional medicine that I was taught told me go home and die. And so that obviously wasn't working so well. But that sometimes chiropractic works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes acupuncture works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes essential oils work, sometimes they doesn't, et cetera, et cetera. So there are all these various medical models that sometimes work and sometimes don't. So my thinking was, if I could figure out, there has to be a common denominator that goes through all of these. Otherwise, because, I mean, if things work, it's because it's following some basic laws, some basic rules of how things are supposed to work. If I could figure out what that common denominator was running through all of these different paradigms, then I'd know how to get myself well. And it began to become apparent to me that the voltage piece was the common denominator for all of these things. Now, obviously it becomes very complicated when you start, particularly someone like me who has no background in electronics or even in physics. I had, a freshman college physics, and that was my background. The issue is, how do you figure out what the common denominator is? And I began to go down a different road, in that I began to understand that there's no such thing as a bunch of little balls of electrons spinning around a charged ball in the center. It's been known for probably 75 years or so that that's really not what an atom is, but that we still teach that. And so I began to read and I fortunately was able to talk to some various people who had gone down that road before me, and began to understand more about what an atom is. Because if you don't understand what energy is, what an atom is, even how the universe works, you can't understand how a cell works. And so I began to consider that there were alternatives. So one of the things that was a great influence on me was the work of Schauberger, in the Swiss water specialist, who had figured out how to make a flying saucer that was fueled by water. And he was captured by Hitler, as you probably know, and made to make us work in that industry for the Germans. He understood very, very well that there are things that spin right and concentrate the energy into a point, which of course we call implosion. And there's something that spins left that starts small and gets bigger and then disappears, we call an explosion. And that those are the two basic kinds of energy. Schauberger's work with water and energy was very influential on my road down trying to figure out how the body works. The other thing that was very powerful was to read the work that muscles are piezoelectric. And so I began to consider, and in a and I was initially wrong. I thought our muscles were wired up the way a 12-volt battery is. You know, you take the cover off of a 12-volt battery, and there are a bunch of 1.5-volt batteries all wired together in there. And I thought that's the way our body was wired up. That we had our muscles were just one big battery that provided power for the cells to work. But then I began to notice that there were patients that had normal total body voltage as I measured it, but there would be one circuit out or one organ out. And I said, well, then I have to be wrong about how we're wired up. And I began to consider that acupuncture meridians were stacks of muscle batteries wired together into one single column that provided power. And I was talking with one of my colleagues, Dr. Evans, about this, and he said, well, have you read Tom Myers's book, Anatomy Trains? And I said, no, I never heard of it. And he said, well, you should read it. So I get Myers's book, and Myers is a massage therapist who had access to cadavers. And he would use blunt dissection and started dissecting the fascia and discovered that it would go all the way from the toe.
The emotion is the root cause that eventually will cause the voltage in that tooth to drop, and then the tooth will eventually get decay and go down that pathway. And then, of course, the things we've discussed will, where you have lack of voltage and lack of oxygen, then the voltage continues to drop, the cell wall deficient organisms show up, etc. So what we found is that if we remove the emotional blockage and you still fail the O-ring test, you likely have infection in the bone. But if you remove the emotion and now the O-ring test goes from abnormal back to normal, one can make the assumption that the problem was the emotional blockage. Now, different researchers have identified which emotions are stored in which circuits. Traditional Chinese medicine says that anger is stored in the liver gallbladder, fear in the bladder, worry in the spleen stomach, lack of joy in the heart small intestine, grief in the lung large intestine, anxiety in the parasympathetic and sympathetic systems. Dr. Banas suggested a different set of observations about which emotions are stored in which circuits, and he published that in his book, New Life Through Energy Healing. Eileen McCusack developed what is called biofield tuning, and this is her observations of which emotions get stuck in which circuits. Another thing that's interesting that McCusack has noted is that if you have an emotion that's related to your father, it tends to get stuck on the right side of your body. And if it's related to your mother, it tends to get stuck on the left side of your body. So sometimes you'll find that you have a circuit that is normal on one side and abnormal on the other side.
But because it addresses the cellular level on how to help your cells grow, regenerate, it's super important. It's something I thought everybody should know. And the one thing he said, and I don't know if it was in this one either, but he said the body never forgets how to heal. It knows, however, it can only heal once you find the problem and give your body what it needs to heal. Okay, that was me writing that. And stop putting garbage. This is why some can heal through diet and exercise. Disease is loss of energy or loss of materials for the systems to function. Sorry about that. So yeah, what he said was the body never forgets to heal. When you get a disease, it's because you're lacking either that electricity in your body or the parts where they have to go, doing the distributing. Then that's not working. Everything in your body is cells, runs on cells. So even the things that are doing these jobs technically have cells inside of them. And I'm sure you can keep bringing this down to infinity. And we haven't, but they probably don't bother because it would be, redundant and endless. But that's the point. You need to take care of yourselves. And if that means, you got to put a little bit of salt in it, all your different drinks you drink, or at least, make a I'm going to drink 5 drinks a day. They say when you do a detox or a cleanse, if you can't go buy specific things, this is what you do. You put the big pieces of Himalayan sea salt in there because of the minerals that's in it, because it's highly alkaline and it's got a high pH, plus your body thinks it's kind of a food, so it doesn't just go through the urinary tract. It actually goes into your digestive system, and it helps pull the other things out. This is if you're doing simply just a water cleanse. Now, I'm not going to get into the Thoth and Archangel, Raphael, all that stuff. I was planning on doing some things and find some correlations, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that today. However, I am going to get into a little bit about Mercury and the signs. I was just, during the episode, I was looking online, I looked at this thing, and it said Mercury was Earth, and Venus was water, and I was like, what the fuck? And then it said Saturn. I forget what it said Saturn was. It was either Earth or air. I couldn't remember. So if what you think and is different from what I say, just understand that, like I said before, you can put the sun in different places. You can put wherever you want, whatever works for you. Okay? I do believe that they do have a specific correspondence, and the more people that believe in that specific way, there's more power in that way. But anyways, we're going to get into some of this. When we come back, I'm going to play that last little part I have of Jerry, which is a small part talking about emotion, getting trapped in the body, different emotions and what they affect, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'll be back in about 5 or 6 minutes.
This is gospel.
Because what I'm finding, now you go weak, that is evidence that circuit is short circuit. Now, for many years, I believed that this was prima facie evidence of an infection in the tooth. I have to tell you that I believe I was wrong, because what I'm finding is that there are often this test will fail, or the patient will fail this test, but nothing has been done to the tooth and nothing can be found on x-ray, and yet you still fail this test. And what I've come to realize is that it's the emotional magnetic fields that get stuck in the teeth that cause the voltage to drop. So you can have a tooth that fails this O-ring test, and that's caused by an emotional blockage, and there's no infection involved at this